One other introductory note about Othello before we get started. We obviously read the play through the prism of Anglo-American, or particularly American, racial consciousness. That is, we live in a society formed and shaped by over 400 years of slavery and racism. So when we see a play about a black-skinned man married to a white woman, it's almost impossible for us not to sort of talk about the dynamics of the play within our context, right? But that's where we've got to be careful. We don't want to take what are our issues, our problems, our flaws, our history, and impose it on another history. This is a play written in 1601 in London, before that long American racial history and the history of slavery had fully emerged and taken hold. That's not to say that Othello's skin color isn't an issue. It's simply to say, be cautious when you look at this play and look at this play for what it is. For example, the character who brings up what we would call racism or racial remarks is Iago. In the early moments in the play, when he calls attention to, in disguise, he's out in the street with Rodrigo, and he calls attention to Othello in all kinds of nasty ways, the beast with two back, and this very disturbing imagery. And he's yelling out to Brabantio's window, Brabantio being Desdemona's father. Brabantio's response, however, is very pointed and very interesting. His first response to hearing that kind of language from Iago is, uh, what profane wretch art thou? What profane wretch art thou? In other words, who's out there in the street using this horrible language? Everyone else in the play uh, accepts and admires Othello for who he is and doesn't really engage in that kind of language. That's not, again, one more point. It's not a simple matter. If you go on into the play, there is obviously a divide or difference. Othello the Moor of Venice, kind of like the Merchant of Venice. We're back in Venice, this cosmopolitan city, dealing with people who are of the city but not native to the city, is different. But the primary difference is, at least it seems to me, in terms of how the play is constructed, is religion. Othello is a North African, dark-skinned Moor Muslim who has converted to Christianity. And I think what's at stake here is the fragility of that conversion. That is, this was a guy who started life in a completely other world, in a completely different religion, and he's converted. And one of the anxieties that Shakespeare's playing upon is how serious, how real is that conversion? How lasting is that conversion? And by the way, we are by habit or by nature or something like that, we all question conversions. We're always a little suspect of them, which is, will it stick? And this particular conversion, by the way, was something of a fantasy. Generally speaking, North African Moors or Muslims weren't converting to Christianity. If there was conversion, it was going the other way. That is, the people who existed along the fault lines of the Ottoman and Islamic Turkish Empire and the Western Catholic Christian Empire, particularly dominated by Spain, were, if anything, converting and moving into the Muslim world simply because it was easier to do and more prosperous to do. The Ottoman Turks army was staffed by and large by a group called Janissaries. These were figures who had been taken captive, particularly at a young age, and were trained or raised up as soldiers and led very productive lives, even though they weren't natives to the area. The Ottoman Islamic Turkish Empire was set up in a way that allowed for it. Western Christianity, not so much. So when we start into the play and we look at the play, um, look closely. Don't look just with our eyes, right? And our eyes, again, it's impossible not to see through the racial prism because of the history and the society which we all live within. Keep in mind this is a play from 1601, and difference is an issue. But the difference may be as much, if not more, about religion than race.